He hasn't aged since 1983. That sounds like a line you say about a high school rival on Facebook, but I mean it in the way that makes your throat feel tight. Same hairline, same laugh like a late-night radio host, same way his coat collar sits too stiff at his neck. He bought this house across from my mother's when I was 5. Last week I moved back in to help Mom after her fall, and he waved from his porch like I just stepped in from riding my bike around the cul-de-sac. We called him Mr. Weaver. In the old Polaroids, he's the newest neighbor on the block, posing in front of a brown Plymouth with a grin and a paper sack. The date stamped in fat red numbers. August 21st, 83. My father has a mustache he regretted. My mother's bangs have a mind of their own. And Mr. Weaver is exactly the man who asked, last night at 1:08 a.m., if he could borrow my shadow. Back then, every Saturday had a glow. Sprinklers catching the sun, dads kneeling in oil stains, someone's radio chasing a baseball game across chain link. Mr. Weaver fit. He brought over store-bought cookies on a paper plate and laughed when my mother tried to give him his plate back. He wore a watch without digits, just one red hand that pointed nowhere you could name. My father didn't like that watch. Later, I learned there were other things he didn't like. He used to speak in rules when he was tired, and I learned to listen when rules arrived without eye contact. Don't stand in a stranger's shade after dark, he said once, wiping his hands on a rag, eyes on the engine. If you hear your name without lips, don't answer. And if anyone ever asks to borrow something that isn't in your hands, say no before you ask what it is. I was 7 the first time I noticed Mr. Weaver didn't have a shadow that minded him. It was the 4th of July, 1989, humid, a parade of beetles clicking under the porch light. Fireworks threw light the color of bad popsicles over everything. He stood at the curb beside my father. Boom! 2 shadows jumped against the driveway, long and gray. Boom! 2 again. Then the white flare that turned everyone into paper cutouts. My father's outline stretched to the neighbor's roses. Mr. Weaver's did something stranger. It stuck to the mailbox post for 1 beat longer than it should have, like gum. He laughed without looking down, and my father put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed hard enough I felt it the next morning. There were other small things, all deniable. He never opened his front door to noonday sun. He'd step out and let it click shut, never half open. He walked home from the bus stop by laying his steps exactly on the line where the maple's shade hit the concrete, toe to heel, like a man counting rosary beads with his feet. Kids got older and moved away. My father died in 2006, a nighttime accident, by the river that made the paper red like it had learned a new phrase it didn't want to use. Mr. Weaver came by with lilies that weren't in season and a folded flyer for the service. He touched my elbow, too familiar for a neighbor you never had dinner with, and said, "You've grown into your father's shadow. It suits you." He was the same age as the first day I remembered him. I didn't think much about this block for a long time. Life got loud. Work ate calendar squares. My mother fell. I took leave and drove the big roads back here with a trunk full of vitamins and guilt. The house smelled like broth and dust. I fixed the screen, bled the radiators, talked to the doctor. Each night I told myself I was being responsible and not avoiding the part where place remembers you even if you outgrew it. I saw Mr. Weaver collecting his paper, in the same tan coat with the collar that never softened. He waved. His teeth looked too white, as if they remembered a toothpaste commercial that ran in a year the rest of us had left behind. It started with the wind chimes, their copper cattails on his porch, handsome, the sort of gift a well-meaning niece would bring. They didn't ring right. They rang at 9:17 p.m. on the dot. A single hum like a chain tight as a ruler, even when there wasn't a breath of air. The third night, my mother said, "I wish and could have heard those." She loved anything that made a house sound awake, and is my father's sister. She died in 1983. The Polaroids came out that night like they do when old stories need to be dusted. Mom pulled a shoebox with a lid that didn't fit and handed me our lives in little squares. There was Mr. Weaver at the potluck in a white shirt. There was Mr. Weaver standing a step back from everyone at the block party, smiling but not looking at the camera. There was Mr. Weaver and my father on Halloween 1984, one of them dressed as a cowboy, one of them in a black cape holding it up like a matador. The cape cast a shadow on the garage door. It was not on the man who wore it. Here's when you think the mind makes monsters of nostalgia. That's a healthy impulse. It keeps you from doing what I did, turning the porch light on and off at 1 a.m. to see if a long-ago superstition might blink back. It did. 3 blinks, slow, 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 like a polite person tapping the brakes as they pass your driveway. I went to bed angry at the house for making me small. The knock came at 1:08 a.m., the moment sleep starts to hand you back your body and checks you for keys. 3 knocks, measured, wood on wood, like someone trying not to scuff the paint. He stood framed in the peephole in the unmoving kind of way. When I opened the door, the porch light pushed our shapes onto the foyer wall. Mine reached to the hat stand. His stopped at his shoes and didn't bother climbing. Up close, he smelled like an old library book held in the sun too long. He didn't say hello. He said, "It won't take long. Would you mind if I borrowed your shadow?" "I think we're all out," I said, which wasn't a joke until my mouth heard it. He laughed in the soft way people on late-night radio laugh for you. "Just until dawn," he said. "I have to go somewhere that does roll call." He tilted his head toward our silhouettes on the wall like a shopper checking a label. "You have plenty." "Why?" My voice was a child's voice, small and stubborn. "Because you're new to the street again," he said. "Fresh ink. No rips." He looked at my eyes like he expected to see himself in them. "Your father was very generous." I stepped in front of the lamp and my shadow folded over his shoes like a stray cat and slid away just as quick. He stayed smiling. "I'll bring it back by breakfast," he said. "It won't feel like anything." "What did my father give you?" I asked. He blinked slow. "His hours. In '83. I couldn't stay for the full measure." He held them. It was neighborly. He put a palm on the jam, not forceful, just something his hand had learned to do one night and couldn't forget. His watch's single red hand pointed at nothing you could name. "No," I said. It was the best sentence I'd said in years. "No." He looked mildly hurt, which is the worst kind of hurt. "You can sleep," he said. "I'll keep watch. It's dangerous to let something stand without its shade." He nodded toward our double on the wall, my black outline reaching like I was trying to push the hat stand over. "Please. It won't take long." I closed the door, not a slam, just a soft final click you hope sounds like habit, not fear. On the wood, on the inside, I placed my palm where his had been and felt warmth like a coin left in sun. The chimes sang once in the same held note. I turned off the lamp and sat on the floor with my feet on my own shadow. It lay there like a dog you're not sure you can trust. On the other side of the door, Mr. Weaver spoke once, voice low so as not to wake my mother. "I'll wait," he said. "It's almost 3:03. 3:03 is when the block takes attendance." I didn't know that, only that the house held its breath. The refrigerator stopped humming, and the furnace fan stalled between ticks. At the door, Mr. Weaver waited like good furniture. My mother, drifting on pain meds, called from her room. "Tell your father I made coffee. He died in 2006. I said no to the dark, a fence of one syllable. My shadow spread like spilled ink across the foyer. Light pooled under the threshold as if night had a skin. Something brushed the wood, cloth, not knuckles, and the chimes sang once wind. "You don't have to give me all of it," he said through the wood. "Just a corner. I'll bring it back ironed." I heard my father inside my mouth. "Don't lend what isn't in your hands." "No," I said again. He sighed like a neighbor watching a bin topple. "We used to be helpful on this street," he said. "Your father understood clocks." I turned on the kitchen sink, the tub, the bath, filling the house with moving water. My shadow thickened at my feet, as if a river somewhere recognized me. I set a mirror on the foyer rug. "You'll wake your mother," he said. "She'll stand. They'll count who stands." "Who?" I asked. "The ones who kept the year you left," he said, gentle as a bylaw. I parted the curtain thumb's width. Figures stood in a ring where streetlights surrendered to yard, spaced like numbers on a dial. Coats you'd wear to a PTA meeting, hands at their sides, mouths moving without sound. They faced inward and counted. At 12 o'clock, there was a gap shaped like a person. Mr. Weaver spoke through the door, Radio cadence. Here. Nothing moved. He said, here. Again. The gap held. I'm not lending what you can't hand back, I told the door. He breathed in a neighborly, disappointed way. We borrow on this street, he said. Your father loaned me ours once. When the flood came, he didn't have change. I stepped onto the mirror. My shadow doubled, one on glass, one on rug, and lagged a fraction, then settled heavier than before. Water ran in 3 rooms, a thin domestic river. Offers belong in your house, I said. Not mine. I heard my father in my mouth again. I said, clear as a fence, I am on duty. The rule holds. They'll choose whoever already wears old hours, he warned softly. Your mother has many. The hall cooled. A slow draft remembering a winter we weren't in. I turned on every lamp between her and the door. Our shadows stacked on the ceiling fan like paper. In the street, the figures lifted their heads together, puppets catching a cue, and began to turn, slow as a minute hand, toward the gap. I felt a down escalator tug at my ankles. My shadow stretched, then pinned to glass and water. Mr. Weaver didn't knock. He sighed, which felt worse. The chimes sang once. Morning will come, he said. We'll wave. You'll bring broth. We'll be civilized. Then at 1:08, I'll knock in a way that sounds like a memory. At 3:03, I'll say please. Try the Garcias, I said, because cruelty can be a form of courage when you've spent yours. They moved in 1997, he answered, and for the first time his voice carried a scuff. The ring finished its turn. The gap faced my house. The asphalt there went a shade deeper, deciding what to do with a rock. My mother murmured, Eddie, don't stay out long. To a man gone. I'll make you an offer, he began. The part of me that sounds like my father stood up and answered first. No. You don't make offers at this door. I repeated it until the words felt dull enough to keep me from tripping. The ring did not count me. I wasn't on their street. Eventually, the house remembered what to hum. I woke sitting on the rug, heels on the mirror, calves aching. Dawn pushed the lamps into boredom. Across the street, he fetched the paper and waved. His cuff had frayed. The red hand on his watch pointed, wandered. I spent the morning searching for my father's handwriting. It wasn't in the glove box, or behind the furnace, or folded in his old tackle. It was taped beneath the bread box. The envelope read, For when the chimes learn your name. Inside, a Polaroid of Mr. Weaver at a summer table, mouth open mid-laugh. On the back, in my father's careful print, if he asks for what you cannot hold, say a no. If he waits, let him wait. Water and mirrors pin you. Do not trade hours. Do not stand in his shade after dark. P.S. Lock the screen. Tonight, that night, I set a pan of water by the door and slid the mirror under the rug. The chimes rang on time. The knock came at 1:08. When I didn't answer, he didn't speak. He let the porch light cast us onto the wall, studying the outline my life made. I stood with my heels on glass, my feet cold from the pan, and practiced saying no until it felt like a habit instead of bravery. We kept that posture a long time, neighbors holding positions. The house hummed. The water trembled. My shadow stayed put as a dog. Last night, at 1:08, he knocked and asked again to borrow my shadow. At 3:03, he said please. I said no. At 4:02, when I was brave enough to sleep, the street itself leaned over the houses and asked, Are you awake? It wasn't a voice. It was a pressure that remembered my name. On the foyer wall, my outline nodded before I could. The mirror held. The water shook. Mr. Weaver waited like furniture built for a waiting room. Dawn arrived by inches. He waved with the paper. I waved back and stood out of his shade until noon.